The sky over the Pacific burned gold that evening as Flight 287 cruised through soft clouds at 30,000 feet, the hum of the engines steady and calm, a rhythm that lulled the passengers into a quiet comfort. Inside the cabin, children giggled over tablet screens, a businessman typed away on his laptop, and an elderly couple held hands, whispering stories about where they first met. Everything felt normal, peaceful, safe. In the cockpit, Captain Harris and his co-pilot joked about how calm the skies were, unaware that every second was ticking toward disaster. Among the passengers sat 12-year-old Emily Carter, her small frame barely filling the window seat. She traveled alone, a blue backpack tucked beneath her legs and a worn-out aviation manual resting on her lap. Her father, an Air Force pilot, had given it to her before she boarded. He had always told her, "Flying isn't about control, it's about calm." She would repeat that line under her breath every time she felt nervous, pretending that his voice was right beside her, guiding her through the sky. She glanced out the window, smiling faintly, wondering if he was flying somewhere out there too, among those distant streaks of white. Then, somewhere near the midpoint of the flight, the lights flickered once, then again. A faint hiss whispered through the vents. The captain frowned, tapping the oxygen gauge, but everything appeared fine. Passengers barely noticed the small tremor that shook the cabin. Emily did. She looked up from her book as her water cup rattled against the tray. The engines gave a low rumble, almost like a cough, and the overhead lights dimmed again. In the cockpit, Captain Harris adjusted his headset. "Tower, this is Flight 287, reading minor system irregularities. Request status check." The tower responded faintly, their signal fading. The hissing sound grew louder, then silence. Both men exchanged worried glances, but before they could react, their vision blurred. Within seconds, their breathing slowed, muscles weakened, and they slumped forward onto the controls. The plane tilted slightly, unnoticed at first. The autopilot tried to compensate, but the oxygen flow was compromised. In the cabin, the first scream broke the peace as a mask dropped from the ceiling. Emily's eyes widened as she saw passengers fumbling in panic. The intercom crackled with static, no voice from the pilots. The world tilted again, drinks spilling, luggage sliding. The child's heart pounded. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Outside, the sun dipped lower, and the once steady aircraft began to drift in silence, engines humming without direction. 30,000 feet above the world, the people inside Flight 287 were on their own, and the only one still thinking clearly was a 12-year-old girl clutching her father's old flight manual. The moment the plane lurched again, chaos erupted inside the cabin, the calm replaced by gasps and terrified cries. Masks dangling from the ceiling as people scrambled to breathe. A baby wailed. An elderly man clutched his chest, and a flight attendant shouted for everyone to stay seated. But her voice was drowned by the blaring alarm that echoed through the narrow aisles. The aircraft's nose tilted downward slightly, not enough for a dive yet, but enough to send drinks spilling, bags tumbling, and hearts racing. Emily's small hands trembled as she pulled the oxygen mask over her face, her mind racing through every flight lesson her father had taught her in their old garage simulator. If the air gets thin, stay calm. Oxygen is your friend. She repeated it over and over, trying to drown out the screams. Across the aisle, a nurse named Sarah tried to calm a group of passengers. "Breathe slow, hold hands if you have to, don't panic." But even her voice quivered with fear. The intercom crackled again, static hissing. No captain, no co-pilot, only silence. One of the attendants, a woman in her 40s with a streak of grey hair, stumbled toward the cockpit door and pounded on it. "Captain, are you there?" No answer. She tried again, harder until her fists hurt. "Open up!" she cried, her voice breaking. The plane shuddered, dipping a few degrees more, and a child screamed that they were falling. Emily's gaze darted to the cockpit door. Something inside her, a strange, still calm, rose above the fear. "They're not answering," she said softly, mostly to herself. The nurse beside her turned. "Sweetheart, stay seated. It's going to be okay." But Emily shook her head. "No, it's not. My dad taught me how to read flight panels. Maybe I can help." The words sounded crazy even to her, but something in her tone made the nurse pause. The chief attendant stared at her, torn between disbelief and desperation. The alarms continued, the angle steeper now. Time was running out. Finally, she made a choice. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the emergency code key from her lanyard, punched it into the security pad, and unlocked the cockpit. The heavy door swung open, and a wave of stale air rolled out. Both pilots were slumped forward, eyes unfocused, their oxygen masks hanging uselessly beside them. Warning lights blinked across the dashboard, the plane now in a slow descent. The attendants froze in horror, realizing no one was flying. Emily stepped closer, her breath shallow behind the mask. For a heartbeat, she just stared at the lifeless controls, her reflection flickering in the glass. Then she whispered, barely audible over the alarms, "Dad, tell me what to do." Emily climbed into the captain's seat, her heart hammering so loud she could barely hear anything else. The cockpit filled with blinking red lights and the low warning chime that pulsed like a heartbeat of danger. The oxygen mask tugging at her face as she struggled to steady her breathing. The controls looked impossibly complex up close, thousands of switches, gauges, and glowing indicators. But she forced herself to remember what her father always told her. It's not about knowing everything, it's about staying calm when everyone else can't. Behind her, the flight attendant stood frozen, staring at this small girl in the pilot's chair. Unsure whether to stop her or let her try, the nurse leaned into the doorway and whispered, "She said her dad's a pilot. Maybe she knows something." It was a whisper of hope in a cabin full of fear. Emily's fingers hovered over the control column, trembling. Then she pushed the intercom button, her voice tiny and shaky. This is Flight 287. Both pilots are. They're unconscious. Can anyone hear me?" Static hissed through the speakers for a few seconds. Then a calm but tense voice answered from air traffic control. "Flight 287, we read you." "Who is speaking?" Emily swallowed hard, her lips dry. "My name's Emily Carter. I'm 12. My dad's an Air Force pilot. I think I can fly it. Please tell me what to do." There was a stunned pause on the other end before the controller responded. "Okay, Emily, okay. We're going to help you. My name's Sarah. I'm right here with you. Can you see your main panel?" Emily nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "Yes, the plane's tilting down." "Good, sweetheart. Pull the yoke gently, slow, steady. Don't fight it too hard." She wrapped her small hands around the yoke and pulled back gently, her arms quivering with effort. The nose began to lift, the altitude indicator slowly leveling out. Passengers in the cabin felt the pressure ease, the descent slowing. For the first time in minutes, the screaming stopped. "That's it," Sarah's voice came again, warm and calm. "You're doing great, Emily. Keep her steady." Emily glanced out the window, the endless blue stretching around her, the golden sun dipping into clouds. And for a moment she felt something powerful, something she had only imagined while sitting in her father's simulator. Control, purpose, flight. The tower guided her step by step, rerouting nearby aircraft, news spreading across radar screens. Around the world, controllers whispered the same thing in disbelief. A 12-year-old girl was flying a passenger jet. Thunder rumbled ahead as the plane sliced through heavy clouds, rain streaking across the windshield like silver knives. Emily's hands clutched the yoke, her knuckles white, her every breath shallow but steady, the cockpit trembling under turbulence that seemed to come from every direction. Alarms blinked and wailed, yet through the chaos came the calm voice from the tower. "You're doing great, Emily. Just keep her level. You've got this." Sarah's tone was warm, steady, and motherly. The only thread of comfort, holding the child together 30,000 feet above the ground. Lightning flashed close enough to illuminate the clouds in blinding white. The rumble shaking the cabin. Passengers cried and prayed. Some whispered her name, others just held hands in silence. The nurse, Sarah from the cabin, had told them the truth now. A 12-year-old girl was in the cockpit flying the plane, and though disbelief swept through them, so did something else. Hope. Fragile but real. Emily's headset crackled. "We're guiding you to an emergency strip, runway 09 at St. Helena Base. Do you copy?" Her voice trembled. "I copy. Good girl. You're descending too fast. Pull back gently, that's it. Keep the nose above the horizon. Perfect." But the storm thickened, clouds swallowing the world outside, and the tower's signal started to cut out. Static buzzed. Sarah's voice broke up mid-sentence. "Emily, don't lose." Then silence. The connection was gone. The girl froze, staring at the empty frequency, her heart pounding so violently it hurt. For the first time since she'd taken control, she was completely alone. Fear clawed at her chest, threatening to drown her. But then she remembered her father's voice again, soft and firm, echoing in her mind. "When instruments fail, trust your training. Fear lies." "The dials don't." She blinked away tears, scanning the gauges. Altimeter steady, heading drifting east. Wind pressure uneven, she corrected with tiny, careful movements. The plane responded like a living thing, obeying her calm. Below, through breaks in the clouds, flashes of city lights appeared like scattered jewels on dark velvet. She was close. The storm began to thin, the turbulence less violent. She pressed the radio button again. "Tower, this is Flight 287. I think I see the ground." Static hissed. Then finally Sarah's voice returned, faint but clear. "We have you, Emily. We see you on radar. You're lined up perfectly. Extend your landing gear." Emily reached for the lever. It jammed. She pulled harder. Nothing. Panic surged again. "It's not working," she cried. "Try manual override." Sarah yelled back. "Red handle under the throttle." Emily grabbed it, yanked hard. A loud metallic thud echoed beneath the plane. The gear was down. The runway lights blinked ahead through the storm. She took a deep breath, tightened her grip and whispered, "Dad, stay with me. I'm bringing them home." The runway lights stretched out before her like a path of stars through the rain, the storm clouds breaking open just enough for the night sky to breathe, the air thick with tension, the passengers silent in their seats, no one daring to move or speak. Every eye turned toward the trembling girl behind the locked cockpit door, the 12-year-old whose voice had guided them through chaos. Emily's hands gripped the yoke so tight her fingers ached, her breath short and sharp, her father's voice echoing in her head. "The hardest part isn't flying, sweetheart. It's landing when you're scared." "Okay. Emily," Sarah's voice came through the headset, calm and steady. "You're lined up perfectly. Just bring her in slow, nice and easy. You're almost home." Emily's eyes flicked between the gauges and the glowing strip of asphalt ahead. The wind still howled, pushing the nose slightly off course. She counted carefully, her lips pressed tight, fighting the shaking in her arms. The altimeter needle dropped, 1,000 feet, 800, 600. She could see the flashing lights of fire trucks and ambulances below, waiting like a halo of hope. The tires had to touch down just right. One wrong move could send them skidding off the runway. Her voice broke into a whisper, not to the tower, not to anyone, just to herself. "Come on, Emily, you can do this. You've done this 100 times with Dad. Now do it for real." She eased back the throttle, the engines roaring softer, the plane gliding lower, the runway rushing toward her. "Pull up slightly," Sarah instructed. "Steady hands, sweetheart. Now hold." "Hold!" The tires hit the ground with a jarring thud. The entire aircraft bounced once, twice, metal groaning, sparks scraping across the tarmac. The passengers screamed. Emily didn't let go. She pulled the nose up again, fought the wheel, kept it straight. The wheels caught, friction roared, and the giant machine slowed, hard. The seatbelts dug into ribs. Luggage slammed against overhead bins. Smoke curled from the landing gear. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, silence. The plane had stopped. For a moment, nobody moved. Then a wave of cheers, sobs, and laughter erupted through the cabin, people hugging, crying, shouting her name. Emily just sat there, shaking, tears spilling freely down her cheeks, her small hands still locked on the yoke. The cockpit door burst open and the flight attendants rushed in, staring in disbelief at the tiny pilot who had just saved them all. When the emergency crews pulled her out, flashes from cameras and news drones painted the runway in gold light. Her father ran through the crowd, still in his Air Force uniform, his eyes wet as he dropped to his knees and wrapped her in his arms. "You didn't just fly a plane," he whispered. Voice breaking. "You flew through fear itself." That night, headlines across the world read, "Miracle at 30,000 feet. A 12-year-old girl lands Flight 287.